Highborn soldiers watch the passes between Morrow and Zenith. The granite pillar, the seventh wave, the valiant Pegasus stand ready to protect the Urizen from the wickedness of the eastern orcs. Perhaps 12,000 strong, give or take, they do not stand alone. As well as the people of Morrow, they are supported by an enchanted castle of glacial ice and pale stone, raised by the eternal family of Navarre to stand vigil over the ancient spires of central Opirus. It is garrisoned by pale knights in moon-silver plate, armed with great two-handed spears. The highborn forces make great use of its central position to bolster their defences. They believe themselves ready for the Druge, should they come. And come they do. There is a trod that runs north through Peregro, from Proceris in Zenith. Once it brought Navarre's stridings and scholars from Theron travelling south to study at the Arch of the Sky. Now it only brings ruin. For the last 3 months the Druge have held their position in Zenith, consolidating their gains, enslaving, butchering, burning, devouring everything that comes within their grasp. It seems that they have slaked their cruel thirst, at least in Zenith. As dawn breaks 3 weeks after the summer solstice, some 20,000 Druge orcs pour northward along the Trog from Proceris, down from the peaks where the Arch of the Sky now stands in ruins. A seventh wave patrol manages to get out a warning of their approach before being overwhelmed, but they are utterly unable to slow the flood of orcs as it washes down into Peregro. At roughly the same time, another 25,000 orcs, more or less, push north from the sodden lowlands of Proceris and Clipion into Cayley. Again, the patrols are quickly overwhelmed, but the great central Heliopticon tower is able to send a warning to every spire in Morrow. Within hours of the first reports of orc movements, the 3 highborn armies move to intercept the orcs. The granite pillar takes the lead again, precisely orchestrating the defence of eastern Morrow. The seventh wave provide intelligence about enemy movements, working to identify opportunities to counter the Druge advance. Sadly, they are unprepared for the sheer number of orcs pouring into Morrow from Zenith. All the strategies in the world are no help when one is outnumbered 4 to 1. For their part, the valiant Pegasus are well prepared for the bloodbath that is to come. They've seen what the Druge can do, and have erected a central hospital in the shadow of the magical fortress in Opirus. Their physics and healers are overwhelmed, however, by the sheer number of casualties they must deal with, and are stretched almost to breaking by the need to offer succour to frightened refugees, as well as injured soldiers. The highborn are able to slow the Druge, but not much more. The granite pillar have the upper hand, up to a point, but much of their strategy is undone by the presence of orcs fighting beneath a scorpion banner. This is not the first time these 2 armies have clashed. As in Zenith, the Scorpion army is adept at countering the disciplined strategies of the highborn, ruthlessly outmanoeuvring and flanking their defensive positions. Still, in this regard at least, the fact the Druge have greater numbers plays into the highborn hands. The Druge find it difficult to coordinate their strategies among so many troops, while the highborn are more able to respond to the shifting Druge advance. But it is not enough. Cayley falls first. The seat of the Arbiter and the spire that watches over it are claimed by the Druge after a vicious battle with the Pillar and the Wave. This sees 500 Imperial soldiers fall beneath poisoned blades and withering arrow shot. Work had already begun here on a central stele, part of Lorenzo Macellio von Temeswar's most recent great work. The site is overwhelmed, defiled, and the stele destroyed. The workers are at least spared. When it becomes clear the Druge advance will not be stemmed, they are evacuated west to Opirus, along with most of the magicians of the nearby spire. Sadly, there's not time to bring the grand library of divination magic, collected over centuries by the magicians of the Arbiter's Seat. It burns, along with the spire. At the same time the Highborn fight to defend the seat of the Arbiter, the Druge attack the Gardens of Morrow. As with the Gardens of Palace before them, the Druge loot the herbs and then fire the beds, reducing the once beautiful garden and its defenders to wind-blown ashes in a matter of hours. The Highborn fall back to the foothills beneath the heart of the Heliopticon. The relentless rush of the Druge cannot be stopped, however. Led by those who march beneath the banner of the Great Crane, the Orcs lay siege to the tower, and after 5 days of bloody fighting, the central pillar on which the entire Heliopticon hangs is lost. The magicians who operate the tower, inspired perhaps by the example of Hadrian of Apulian, refuse to leave. At the last moment, with the Druge breaking down the doors of the central chamber itself, they draw down a column of burning light in an outpouring of energy that shatters the tower and immolates 200 Orc soldiers in a single instant. Nothing remains of the tower, the Orcs, or the courageous defenders, save a perfect circle of black glass. The Heliopticon goes dark. For years uncounted, the Urizen have relied on it to communicate between their spires, separated as so many of them are by the broken land and treacherous mountain roads. Now the voices of the Magi fall silent. For 12 days there is nothing. Then, a fortnight after the loss of the central tower, the Heliopticon flickers into life again. There have long been contingencies in place for just such an occurrence, unthinkable as it might once have been, and as soon as the Druge crossed the borders into Morrow, the preparations began. The Heliopticon is much reduced, slower, and more limited in scale, but the light of Urizen refuses to be extinguished. For the time the Heliopticon is silent, the Imperial armies are forced to rely on more mundane means of communication. Runners from the 7th Wave and the sentinels from the citadels of Morrow carry messages by hand between the spires and the Highborn defenders. Some are intercepted. The war of crane and frog that has been played in the mountains of Morrow becomes increasingly bitter in the absence of the Towers of Light. Where most of the Druge forces seem to be focused on death and destruction, on butchering the defenders of Urizen and destroying their hope, a faction among them is sending tendrils out across the territory, gathering information, probing for weakness, hunting their next target. Desperate encounters between the scouts beneath the Winged Serpent banner and the 7th Wave take place as far afield as Ravion in the far west of Morrow. Indeed, there are reports of spies in the foothills below Canterspire, most likely leading to the regretful decision by the Academy to relocate to Astolat. While the 7th Wave do their best, gathering vital battlefield intelligence of their own, it seems inevitable that the Druge scouts have likewise discovered a great deal about the forces arrayed against them. Further east, in Perigro, the fighting is no less fierce. The wonder that was the glorious fountain of dawn and dusk falls quickly before one band of advancing Orcs, those who bear banners showing a baleful lizard. They seize its manor and tear the beautiful pipes and basins apart in search of more. A beautiful, unique work of art and artisanship destroyed in a day. The hot springs permanently damaged by the rapacious onslaught of the Druge. In Perigro, the Highborn are aided by warriors from an unlikely source. The once scattered sword scholars have gathered in the foothills to oversee and assist in the rejuvenation of the Temple of the Winds. Once a centre for their particular philosophy of wisdom and the study of their false paragon Suleiman, work had already begun on restoring the place when the Druge began to move. 500 sword scholars, give or take, are camped around the construction site in tents and pavilions. As the Druge inch closer, they help the valiant Pegasus set up a field hospital to deal with the stream of injured soldiers, fighting desperately to slow the Orc advance. Then, when the Druge come in force, they fight courageously to keep the Druge at bay. Scores of sword scholars give their lives to protect their sacred place, and to allow the injured to be moved to safety. Arrayed in mithril plate and wielding great two-handed swords, they fight alongside the Highborn, slaughtering every Druge that comes before them. In the end, though, it is not enough. The Druge overwhelm the Temple of the Winds. The warrior priests are devastated by the attack, easily 2/3 of their movement lost. Dozens of scrolls concerning the teachers of Suleiman are seized by the Druge. Those sword scholars who are captured are forced to watch as the cruel orcs tear apart the Temple of the Winds. They are then impaled in a rough ring of wooden stakes around the rubble. The final and most vicious battle of the campaign is yet to come. Until a year ago, the halls of knowledge stood in Clipion to the east. Between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice last year, the premier college of Urizen magical thought somehow moved from Zenith to Morrow, just ahead of the Druge army sweeping west through Zenith. Since then, the halls have stood on the shores of the largest hot lakes of central Perigro. The Druge were furious when they discovered the halls had escaped them, so it is perhaps no surprise that the Orc strategy seems focused on them now that they've rediscovered their location. The Highborn make a stand here, draw a line in the sand in the hills south of the college. The Druge smash against the Highborn wall, and after 2 days are pushed back, but only for a day. A trickle of reinforcements from Cayley becomes a flood. Nearly the entire force of the Orc invasion brought to bear against the beautiful ancient buildings of the Halls of Knowledge. Over a week of bloody fighting, and 2,000 Highborn laid down their lives to secure time for as many of the professors and librarians time to escape west to Altis. Many refuse to leave their books, desperate to carry with them as much lore accumulated here as they possibly can. Among their number, architects and builders engaged in expanding the college to allow for an increased focus on autumn magic. Indeed, work has already begun when the Druge are first sighted. By the time the Temple of the Winds falls, however, most of the labourers have already fled. They are forced to abandon much of the white granite, mithril and weirwood dedicated to the new construction, however. A week of fighting follows, in which the Highborn battle first in the foothills and then in the halls themselves. This open and airy college was never intended as a fortification. Beautiful glass domes and windows, wide arcades and sweeping balconies alike were designed to allow the students and scholars to bask in the majestic views of the heavens, to contemplate the intricate order of the natural world, to engage in grand debates about the nature of magic. The libraries were built for ease of access, to hold great collections of books, scrolls, and works of art. The site is practically indefensible. In the end, with librarians still loading the scrolls into ox wagons, the Highborn are forced to retreat. Those who remain behind are butchered in a frenzy of bloodletting and torture by the Druze as they pour through the building like ants. Several civil service prognosticators are among those unaccounted for. Brave people who would not leave their fellow scholars behind to face the Druze alone. The Highborn regroup, preparing to launch a counter-offensive to reclaim the college, but before they can do so, the first smoke is seen. A white pillar, and then a second, rise from the shores of the hot springs. After a single day of murder and looting, the Druze set the libraries and galleries aflame. As they have done so many times before, it seems they are more interested in destruction than in conquest. The fires burn for 2 days. 2.5 centuries of learning lost to flames and turned to ashes. The survivors can do naught but weep in silence, and then turn to begin a long trudge west towards the dubious safety of Highwatch. The halls of knowledge burn, but the Druze are not done. They harry the retreating highborn armies from Perigro and from Cayley and push forward to Opporus. There at last the Druge advance is slowed and stopped and reversed. With grim determination, in the shadow of the frozen citadel the highborn fight. The Orcs are understandably hungry to take Opporus and to claim no doubt the bounty of the Cantaspire Circle. Their hunger remains unsated for now. Aided by the Auric Horizon, the Knights of Cathan Cannae, and the Magicians of Cantaspire, the highborn are finally able to hold against the Druge. The bulk of the Orc force withdraws to camps in Perigro and Cayley, no doubt preparing themselves to renew their assault. A pall hangs over Morrow. The halls of knowledge are gone. The glorious fountain is gone. The great central tower of the Heliopticon is gone. The seat of the Arbiter is in the hands of the Druge. 4,000 highborn soldiers lie dead or captured by the Druge. More than 300 sword scholars have been slain. Many of the scholars of the halls of knowledge have either been killed or enslaved. Spires across eastern Morrow, spires that had stood since the height of Toruniel, are in ruins. Their people scattered or enslaved, or living their final moments in agony as tormented victims of the wickedness of the Druge. Game information. The Druge have conquered Perigro and Cayley, but have managed to take only a fingerhold in Opporus. The Empire still controls the territory, but if they lose a third region, Morrow will fall under the control of the Druge. The Halls of Knowledge have been destroyed. This also means that the expansion to the Halls of Knowledge has failed. The central Heliopticon tower has been destroyed. The Heliopticon still functions, but its ability to quickly convey messages across the whole of Urizen has been impeded. The sites to the Temple of the Winds and the Legacy of Wisdom have fallen to the Druge. These commissions thus cannot be completed. The glorious Fountain of Dawn and Dusk has been destroyed. The Gardens of Morrow have been burnt to the ground, destroying that great work completely. Until at least 2 more regions of Morrow or Zenith are recovered, the Urizen are considered to be exceeding their ability to support armies. There is plenty of evidence that this situation could have been considerably worse. Without the frozen citadel in Opporus and the strategic defence of the Granite Pillar, the massive Orc force would have been well on their way to taking the third region this season, potentially destroying even more of Urizen.